Hey everyone, and welcome back to AIPIP. Sometimes real life gets so wild, it's almost like an SNL skit,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Well, this week we're actually diving into an SNL skit that parodies a very serious, very real event.
Oh, wow.
That tense White House meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelenskyy that happened last Friday.
It's really amazing how SNL can find humor in even the most delicate situations. And I mean, this meeting with the backdrop of the war in Ukraine and all the pressure Zelenskyy is under,
Right.
it was definitely ripe for satire.
Absolutely. And they did not hold back at all.
Yeah.
The cast was brilliant as always, with James Austin Johnson nailing his Trump impression again.
Oh, he's so good.
Bowen Yang as the almost unbelievably intense VP J.D. Vance.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Mikey Day as Zelenskyy.
Yeah.
And Marcelo Hernandez as Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
I love him.
He was perfect.
What struck me right away was how they portrayed Trump and Vance.
Yeah.
You know, Vance's over-the-top defense of the U.S., like it's the only country that matters.
Right.
It felt like a caricature of that America First rhetoric we've been hearing for years.
It's almost like they took that idea and cranked it up to 11 just to see how ridiculous it could get.
Totally.
And then you have Trump fixated on matching ties with Zelenskyy
Oh, yeah.
instead of, the war tearing his country apart.
Right.
It's classic Trump, prioritizing appearances over substance.
It's interesting because they're not just making fun of Trump's personality here. They're really using those exaggerated traits to highlight a bigger issue, how some politicians can focus more on optics than on actual solutions.
Exactly. And speaking of optics, did you catch those subtle jabs at Zelenskyy?
Yes.
There were moments that played on those criticisms he's faced, like not appearing grateful enough to the U.S. or his casual attire being seen as disrespectful.
That's a tricky line to walk, right? SNL has to find the funny without minimizing the real suffering in Ukraine. It makes you wonder if those jokes land differently depending on your view of the conflict.
That's such a good point. It definitely adds another layer to the satire. And speaking of adding layers, just wait till you hear about the cameo they threw in. But before we get to that, if you're digging this deep dive so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to AIPLP for more pop culture analysis.
Yes.
We'd love having you along for the ride.
Now about that cameo.
Okay.
Mima Myers showing up as Elon Musk. That was unexpected.
I know, right? And they went all out, giving him that T-shirt and jacket combo he wore to that recent political event.
I know.
But then
they added a chainsaw.
a chainsaw. Talk about taking things to the next level of absurdity. I mean, it's clearly a nod to Musk's real-life antics, but seeing him wield it on SNL, it's like they're saying his whole persona has become this larger-than-life caricature.
And in the skit, Musk is brought in as this waste eliminator for the Trump administration, suggesting wild ideas like firing all the air traffic controllers to boost efficiency.
Which is just brilliant satire, right?
Yeah.
On the surface, it's hilarious because it's so ridiculous.
But underneath, it's poking fun at those cost-cutting schemes that value profit over people's safety. Those ideas that sound good in theory, but could have disastrous consequences in reality.
You hit the nail on the head. SNL is so good at weaving those real-world anxieties into their comedy. It's like they're holding up a funhouse mirror to society and saying, look at this, isn't it crazy?
And the craziest part is how much truth lies behind that craziness. But we're just scratching the surface here. Let's unpack this skit even further and see what other gems we can uncover. Welcome back to AIP Up.
Yes, welcome back.
We're in the middle of breaking down Saturday Night Live's hilarious take on that Trump-Zelenskyy meeting. It's just fascinating how they used that Musk cameo to really poke at those anxieties around unchecked power, isn't it?
It's funny because at first I was just laughing at the absurdity of Musk suggesting things like firing all the air traffic controllers.
Oh, yeah.
But the more I think about it, the more unsettling it becomes.
Right.
It makes you wonder if we were placing too much trust in these larger-than-life figures with radical ideas.
That's the brilliance of SNL, right? They can make you laugh and think at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's not just slapstick. There's a real intelligence behind their satire.
Totally. It's not just about making fun of people. It's about making us question the systems and structures that allow these situations to arise in the first place.
Yeah.
So as we dive deeper, what really stood out to you in this skit?
Well, the whole dynamic between Trump and Zelenskyy was just captivating.
Yeah.
You have Trump obsessed with superficial things, and then you have Zelenskyy dealing with a real war in his country.
Right.
It's such a stark contrast, and it speaks volumes about their priorities.
It's like they're living in two different realities. And SNL captures that tension perfectly. They highlight the absurdity of worrying about matching ties when there's a humanitarian crisis unfolding.
Exactly. It's like a commentary on how out of touch some leaders can be with the struggles of everyday people. And remember that running gag about the Russians being treated badly?
Oh, yeah.
That felt like a direct hit on how misinformation can shape perceptions even in serious situations.
It's so true. It's a reminder that we need to be critical of the information we consume, especially now with all the noise on social media. We can't just blindly accept what we hear.
It all comes back to critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
We need to be able to analyze information, figure out if it's credible, and then form our own opinions. And, I think SNL in its own way encourages us to do that. They're not giving us the answers. They're presenting us with scenarios and letting us figure things out for ourselves.
It's like they're saying, here's the world, folks. What do you make of it?
Precisely. But before we get too deep into the philosophical implications, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you're enjoying this analysis, hit that like button and subscribe to AIPRP for more insightful pop culture conversations.
We really appreciate your support.
Now back to the skit. One thing I found interesting was how they handled the criticisms directed at Zelenskyy. It's a sensitive topic, but I think they managed to strike a balance.
I agree. They touched on those criticisms about Zelenskyy not showing enough gratitude to the U.S. and his casual attire being perceived as disrespectful, which are sentiments we've heard echoed in certain political circles.
Right.
But it's important to remember that this is satire. SNL isn't necessarily endorsing those viewpoints. They're using them as material for their comedy.
Exactly. It's like holding up a mirror to society and saying, look, this is what some people are saying. What do you think?
It's about sparking dialogue and encouraging us to grapple with these complex issues. And, sometimes laughter is the best way to do that.
Absolutely. But we are nearing the end of part 2, and we still have so much to unpack. We'll be wrapping up this discussion of SNL's take on this complicated meeting in part 3. See you there.
Welcome back to AIPRP for the final part of our deep dive into SNL's satirical take on the Trump-Zelenskyy meeting. It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
It really has. We've laughed, we've analyzed, and hopefully we've all gained a deeper understanding of how satire can be used to tackle complex issues.
We've covered so much ground, from the spot-on casting to the subtle jabs at both Trump and Zelenskyy. And who could forget Mike Myers' surprise entrance as Elon Musk, wielding a chainsaw, no less.
Oh, that was pure comedic genius. It's moments like those that remind us why SNL has been such a cultural touchstone for so long. But beyond the laughs, they've managed to spark some serious conversations here, haven't they?
Absolutely. The skit brings up the ongoing war in Ukraine, the delicate relationship between the U.S. and Ukraine, even the role media and technology play in shaping our understanding of the world. It's a lot to digest, but SNL does it with such wit and intelligence.
They're masters of satire, using exaggeration and humor to expose the absurdities we often overlook in our everyday lives. And by doing so, they encourage us to think critically and challenge the status quo.
It's not just about making us laugh, it's about making us think, question, and engage in meaningful dialogue. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's revisit that thought-provoking question we posed earlier. How does satire like this influence our perception of political events and figures?
It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer. But I think we can all agree that satire has the power to shape opinions and influence political discourse. It can highlight hypocrisy, expose flaws in arguments, and make us reevaluate our assumptions.
And sometimes laughter can be the most effective way to confront uncomfortable truths or challenge those in power. It can make us see things in a new light.
That's true. But we also have to remember that satire can be a double-edged sword. What one person finds funny, another might find offensive, and there's always the risk of satire being misinterpreted or taken out of context.
It's a reminder that we have to engage with satire thoughtfully. Consider the intent, the context, and the potential impact.
Yeah.
It's not always black and white.
Exactly. In the end, the real power of satire lies in its ability to spark conversations, challenge our perspectives, and make us think differently about the world around us. It's a reminder that even in the midst of serious events, there's always room for humor and critical reflection.
So as we close out our deep dive into this SNL masterpiece, we want to leave you with one final thought. How has this skit influenced your own perception of the Trump-Zelenskyy meeting and the broader geopolitical landscape?
Take some time to reflect on the issues raised, the humor used, and the potential impact of satire on public opinion. The conversation doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep laughing.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe to AIPRP for more insightful pop culture analysis. We love having you as part of the AIPRP community.
Until next time, stay curious and keep those critical thinking caps on.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into SNL's take on the Trump-Zelenskyy meeting. Hope you enjoyed the journey.